Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty Roundtable Radio Talk Show.
All right. Happy to have you along, my fellow Americans. Sam Bushman live on your radio. Hard-hitting news the networks refuse to use. No doubt starts now. Hope you're all doing absolutely fantastic. This is the broadcast for March 31st in the year of our Lord 2025. This is our one of two, and the goal always to protect life, liberty, and property, to promote God, family, and country, to use the checks and balances brilliantly put in place by the Founding Fathers. That is the solution at our fingertips. As a moral people turns to God Almighty, we can restore the Republic. If we don't choose to do those things, it ain't going to go well, folks. I'm promising you that. Welcome to the show. Hope you're all doing absolutely fantastic. Dr. Scott Bradley with me, freedomsrisingsun.com. Welcome back, sir.
Well, thank you very much, and it's good to hear you back in town again, you know.
Yes, sir. It's always easier to be in studio, that's for sure. I've got two Utah news stories that I wanted to cover because they're just interesting. Utah becomes first state to ban gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, whatever, plus flags in government buildings and schools. They say following a pride rally, and they have this photo and all this stuff, and I find it very, very interesting. Utah became the first state to prohibit flying these pride flags after the governor announced, listen, that he will allow this ban on the flags without his signature. He believes even if he refuses to sign it, they'll override him, so he's going to let it become law without his signature. He says he continues to have serious concerns with the policy, but chose not to reject it because his veto would be likely to be overridden by the Republican-controlled legislature. I guess they'll be fine. Listen, here's how the wording is. So listen carefully. Starting May the 7th, state or local government buildings will be fined $500 a day for flying any flag other than the United States flag, the Utah state flag, military flags, or a short list of others. They say, political flags supporting a certain party or candidate, such as president, will not be allowed. Donald's Make America Great Again flags will not be allowed, they say. Anyway, there you have it. They say that Utah has a large gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender population. And anyway, it's a big deal. And, Doctor, what do you say to this?
You know, it's become almost like, and I think about where everybody is trying to make some kind of statement about this or that or the other, and there's always an in-your-face kind of thing and everything. And I think about in school, for example. I mean, it just is amazing to me how these identity politics and these things like some kind of protest thing or some kind of purple hair thing. I don't know. Maybe people have purple hair and that's the way of the world today. But it seems like somebody's always trying to distract from the order of business. And, it could almost become a United Nations of identity flags. If everybody and their dog got to put that on, I mean, I don't know. Are they going to fly? Are they going to allow? Maybe it's on there. Maybe it's not. You can take a look. The MIPOW flag. I mean, that's something that we engage people in foreign entanglements that are completely unreasonably done and unconstitutionally done. And we leave them over there, and then somebody forgets them. I don't know. I just wonder if sometimes we don't need to be reminded of some things. But I think by and large, this idea of trying to string 25 flags across the front of your classroom is somewhat distracting. So I don't know.
It's okay. Say this. I support the ban. The governor's off his rock. But what I think we should be smart to do is this. We shouldn't target the gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender flag. All that does is create factions to fight. What we need to do is jettison, in my mind, anything that's not just basically the Utah state flag or the United States flag, right?
And the Utah state flag got perverted here with recent actions where they jettisoned a flag that had some traditional recognition in the state of Utah and put it together with a flag drawn with a crayon. I mean, I just, it's so interesting to me that they're trying to dumb down even the appearance of the Utah flag. They're dinking around with a lot of different things, but I think you're right. I don't think you say, okay, we're completely just targeting the LGBTQ WXYZ thing, but I think the governor has created his own problem with this thing. The governor has been our most LGBTQ WXYZ, shall we say, sensitive individual. I mean, this guy has done everything in his power to put that at the forefront, and I think that's exactly why he refused to veto or to sign. He just he wants to maintain that as the what his motivation behind that is, I do not know, but it sure seems that he has been the most focused that way of any governor we've ever had in all of our history on any of these specialized identity politics things. And so, yeah.
Well, and the fact that the governor's going to be overridden or, they're going to, override him on this thing really proves the point. Whereas, a lot of times the majority of the people choose to do what is right. He's off his rock on this one. The governor needs to be slammed. Sadly, it's almost would be better if he wouldn't sign it and then they would override him. But he chooses to sidestep this thing. I don't like that. I know he's expressing his concerns, but here's my response. It isn't about gay and lesbians, okay? And if you just, write the headlines like they've done to say that, now you've just created a wedge. What it really is about is this. You don't have a political agenda that should be promoted by the state, period. Now, I don't mind the state flag flying. Personally, how I'd do it is I'd fly Utah a little bit above the United States flag, right?
Well, the law says the U.S. flag has to be in the preeminent position. I mean, that's what
I have a problem with
Title
that.
IV says.
I understand. I have a problem with that, though. And the reason that I do
law.
is because the states created the federal government. And if you do it the other way, then people don't understand the true origin and creations of the proper role of government, Doctor.
That's maybe true, but here's the deal. There's some people that I find that have a far more globalist perspective, and they'll fly the United Nations flag or the Mexican flag or something else above,
right.
And you say, well, Mexico existed before the United States did, and there's a
but it's not part of the contract with the people. It's not a modern day deal. If you go back to that, you can just say Adam and Eve were on the land and Cain killed Abel, and it's really Cain's land, right?
Right. But the fact of the matter is, though, that is a federal, it's a title.
Yes, it is. And I'm just telling you that I disagree with it, though. The general idea that the general government is above everything and above everybody else is false doctrine. It isn't true. Constitutionally, it's not even correct. And so look at the contract with the people, your state constitution and your general constitution. And so I agree with you. That's the law, so we got to obey it, but we should overturn it. We should have each state be a little bit higher than the general government, and we say, hey, this is our state. We're a constitutional republic, and anything that we don't need to do statewide level for whatever appropriate delegated reasons, we can let the general government do it, but the general government's subservient to the states, except for in those designated areas that we've defined. It's an understanding point that I'm making, right?
I do, certainly. It is the supreme law of the land within its jurisdiction. Within its delegated authority, it is the supreme law of the land. And the problem is that we tend to believe that anything and everything that general government does, and generally
and we believe that based on these little symbols that get sent to us erroneously, like, hey, the United States flag needs to be the highest one above the states and stuff like that. Now, Texas defies this regularly, right? But the rest of us, we believe this because we've been indoctrinated with this propaganda for so long, right?
We have indeed. The thing is, too, though, that we need to recognize that in Utah Constitution, the enabling documents of the Utah Constitution specifically required Utah to recognize in its Constitution the supremacy of the United States Constitution. So there are some nuances out there.
And that becomes a double-edged sword, too. I get that the general government, the U.S. Constitution, has supremacy in its very, very narrow, defined way. But when Utah is forced to make a statement like that in their own constitution, what we do is we violate the separation of powers, and we violate the reality of who created who, right? And so this is why Americans, and especially Utahns, are so mixed up on this topic.
Well, it is, and Utah was required to do a lot of things to get in. Utah made 7 applications to become a state. I mean, they were rejected, and there's the logic, reason, and intelligence behind that I could go into a great detail, but Utah kind of figured out how not to become a state long before they figured out how to become a state. But the United States government had a real set of shoehorn questions or requirements to get them into the union.
Yeah, and see, I think under the equal footing clause, that's wrong in and of itself. We can go down that road too, right?
Yeah, they were not brought in under equal footing. Absolutely not. But the fact is they should have been, and the fact that's required right from even before the Constitution was signed. That the intention was to bring all states in under an equal footing, and basically the states west of the Mississippi got hammered on that. But Utah had to put in 10th point of the Communist Manifesto, for example, in their constitution.
Yeah, education, right?
Yep. I mean, and it's like, oh, wait a minute, that's Marxist. But that was since, I mean, there's been some really screwy things happening, and
they forced the state to basically have enough Democrats and enough Republicans too. They played the partisan card on that thing and pushed us into parties, which will eventually be the destruction of the country. I mean, the list goes on and on and on of the caving Utah had to do to become a state.
It's absolutely true, and what they did, I mean, you notice the Enabling Act was created in 1895. And it was long after, some of these socialist programs had become kind of embedded in things. I mean, they even in the Utah Constitution, they get into labor law and stuff like that. I mean, it's like, wait, what is a constitution supposed to be? Kind of something that takes away all your options in a lot of different things. It generally is to be for specific things that have this, kind of, it's a kind of value that it doesn't come and go with this and that and the other. I mean,
to me, it's this way. The government's supposed to be defensive in nature. It's supposed to, have a way to fund its mechanism for a defensive role, which is to protect us, because we can't sit on the porch with a gun on our lap all day. We need to be free to, So the government's to protect us. The government's to create a level playing field so that, hey, we have a fair chance to work out differences and things like that. And, but when the government starts to change from a defensive role to an offensive role, and the way when they do that is they start to pull the lever in the favor of the few at the expense of the many. Whatever group it is, they've crossed the line when they do that, right?
Absolutely, and so that's what a republic's about, is protecting the individual rights of all people, minority or not. But let's just take an example of what an encroachment has happened over the years. If you go to Article 1, Section 4, and you look at the fact that the states were to be in charge of elections. Okay, now, and this would tie into Donald Trump's recent executive order about elections. We all want good elections, but what happened was an overstepping with his executive order. Let's just very briefly, the states were to be in charge of the elections. Well, everything the general government has done since that time, Amendment 14, Amendment 15, Amendment 17, Amendment 19, Amendment 24, Amendment 26, and then beginning in 1965, the voter acts that have been amended numerous times, and now this executive order by Trump, it's just encroaching on the states.
Well, and that history you just painted documents the truth. It used to be the states, then it was the feds, it used to be the legislative body. Now that it's the executive body, see, it's going all south as we violate the checks and balances, people.
No question.
But there you have it, and I bring it up because I'm not interested in targeting the gay and lesbians over this thing. I don't believe we should have all kinds of flags flying at the government behest in the first place. No one should deserve a special privilege at the trough of the public flag scenario. When they have this short list of military flags, that scares me too. I'm not excited about flying military flags over civilian reality there. And I will say this.
Stop on that.
Yeah.
Sam, let's just pause for a moment. And again, you could take the rest of the program on this concern. The civilian oversight of all military action is a well-documented, firmly entrenched, and correct
vital principle.
It is. But we are going into, because of the kind of, it's a worship almost of the military that we do.
And that's why I don't want to see military flags everywhere.
The military, I mean, okay, again, you
because you start to indoctrinate the people to believe the military is your friend, and the military is not your friend for the most part.
Well, the military is your friend if it's in its proper place, but as Madison pointed out in the
and if it was in its proper place, it'd be plenty happy to let the civilian state flag and general government flag fly, right?
Right, but here's the deal: the military is generally the way by which tyranny is implemented, and if we get to the point that our military, yes, we got to support them for all of this military adventurism. How about supporting them by not putting them in harm's way? Let's use them appropriately to defend all the things Americanist. So we've got all of this, thing called liberty that we get to keep. But the problem is that sooner or later we're going to have a requirement of universal military service, and there'll be a military caste.
Putting the military flag right up against those other two flags all the time makes you believe that, hey, the military is kind of equal to the civilian government, and it's not true.
Yeah, you're right, and the civilian control. I mean, it goes back to Article 1, Section 8, and the president is only really the commander-in-chief over the militia when they're called into actual service. I mean, these kinds of things.
And by the way, Stuart Rhodes, our dear friend, tried to be there and tried to say, President, if you need to call upon us, please do. The president didn't. Now it's all manipulated wrong. I personally think if the president would have called on the Oath Keepers and others, they would have had a lot more peace on January the 6th, personally.
Well, and then you think about, okay, Utah's Constitution has been ignored in this Article 15, if I recall correctly, has been ignored by the state of Utah since the very date that the Utah's Constitution was brought into play. And Article 15 talks about the militia, a select militia for the whole state of Utah. The whole state of Utah is supposed to have a militia that includes all the men 18 to 45. The state of Utah is supposed to arm and train them. So it's in the civilian hands to protect their nation. This is not the National Guard. National Guard did not exist in 1895. That came in the Dick Act, 10 years later anyway. But the fact of the matter is, Utah has never said everybody.
They have never honored that provision, that requirement in its own contract with the people of Utah.
And the people of Utah, if every person in Utah was trained on military weapons, and it's very specific about the weaponry and everything, is supposed to be basically the same as the U.S. military is. So, every citizen basically. Now, the militia in Utah is defined 18 to 45. The United States Constitution, George Mason and Madison, James Madison, principal authors of the Second Amendment, defined the militia as everybody except for a few elected officials. So it's everybody. I mean, even though I'm way beyond 45, according to the United States understanding that was in place at the time the United States Constitution and the Bill of Rights were ratified, it's everybody. And
the whole point was it was very clear that the Founding Fathers intended as much to be in civilians' hands as possible. That's why we shouldn't have longer than a 2-year standing army. It was supposed to be a contract with the people at the state level with their state constitutions and the general government level with the general constitution. And it was very defined. It was very separated. We delegated certain authorities to different intentional jurisdictions. And the whole goal was to reduce power, to reduce and divide authority to where checks and balances would protect us. And the problem is all your bureaucrats and professional do-gooders at the government level are all on the take, and they're not jealously guarding their responsibilities. They're not providing the checks and balances, and we've spent the last 100-plus years disassembling those checks and balances. And the proof of the pudding is this latest, executive order from Trump that you just pointed out, right? I mean, where does he get authority to do that?
Well, he doesn't. And that's the thing. You know what he says? Hey, they elected me to get elections, get the elections back to credibility and integrity and everything. We all want
so
that.
we need to go back to
do.
J6 and have Congress review that last election, which they failed to do because of the, quote, crisis that was created by provocateurs in government, right?
And the Supreme Court overlooked their responsibility in Article 3 to take up that issue when states were suing states about that issue. But the point of the matter is that constitutions are all about controlling, containing, dividing, and subdividing power so that the accrual of power does not happen. And we just constantly accrue more and more and more power to that general government. And in the case of Trump, I admit everybody wants to have good elections, but you don't seize power.
Yeah, but at what expense, right? Because you're going to have worse elections if you let the military seize power at some point. And hey, what elections are you going to have in that kind of a monarch dictator / I don't know what style manipulated government we end up with when we just dissolve all the checks and balances that are in place by our founders? And, it's a very dangerous game we're playing here, folks. But understand this. We're in a fallen world, and everything by default in a fallen world goes from order to disorder. And it takes energy. It takes effort. It takes direction. It takes, guidance from wise servants of the Republic, statesmen, if you will, to reverse that and to create and hold up order. And the way you do that is by understanding and insisting on these principles that create order and stability and safety in a republic, right?
I might just add and recommend to our listeners that Federalist 39 be reviewed again, and James Madison very carefully outlines the fact that it is not a federal government and it is not a national government. Federation means the group always has say in it. National means the nation has power over everything else. It is a kind of a combination of both, where the states
they called it a general
power
government to create a new term to define the points you're making, right?
Right. And so it's not a national government, it's not a federal government, but it's a mix of both. There are some things that are national powers. This idea to go to war, for example, the counterfeiting things.
Market reprisals.
Absolutely. All of that kind of stuff happens at the national level. But the federal level, you have things the states retained within their own power scope. So people don't understand that very good now, and what we've got is a morass of, honestly, there's many people that think Trump ought to be a monarch, and there's big talk about him doing another term of office, and it's like, holy cow.
All right, that's one of the next things I have on my list. I had it slightly different order, but Trump floats possibility of running for third term. He says there are methods in which you could do this, but see, I 100%, 1,000% disagree. Okay, there's no way you can do that legally or appropriately unless you try to pass an amendment to the Constitution for this purpose or something. But to me, this is a clown show. Why would we want to do that in the first place? What does Donald bring to the table that's so vital? We think that these people are like, not suspendable or expendable, or we think somehow that Trump is our savior. What are we thinking on this? What Trump needs to do is use his time, if he believes he's so valuable, to make sure others get the understanding, right?
He'll be 82 years old at the next election, and we've already been through the dementia case. I mean, what are people thinking? And on top of that, it's the 22nd Amendment. In case you want to get your Constitution out and look at stuff like that, people. But I saw an interview he did that he did not discount it. He says, I'm not going to talk about it right now. So
I discount it and reject it 100% and say he's off his rock crazy. I don't think it's wise in any way. On one hand, they push for term limits, which I reject as well because we've already got them in place. Then on the other side, they want Donald Trump to serve as long as he's alive or what. We've lost our minds, people. Why don't you go back to the checks and balances that made America great? A good, honest, moral people looking to their God and using the checks and balances to not seek for power, but to seek to divide it and pull it down and chain people down with the supreme law of the land, the Constitution for the United States of America. That is the way forward. Hang tight, Dr. Bradley and yours truly continue in seconds on your radio.
How would you like to help this program reach more people and earn silver at the same time? Call or text 801-669-2211 for complete details.
News this hour from townhall.com. I'm Rich Thomason. We're expecting another eventful week as President Trump's policy on tariffs kicks into an even higher gear. On Wednesday, he's promising to slap reciprocal tariffs on other countries, including some major U.S. trading partners and allies. The president says many have taken advantage of the U.S. for far too long, and it's time to stop it. Disney and its ABC TV network are coming under the microscope at the Federal Communications Commission.
In a letter to Disney's CEO, FCC Commissioner Brendan Carr said the investigation will see whether the company is promoting invidious forms of DEI discrimination. He said he has significant concerns about Disney's practices. The Trump administration has taken aggressive action against the media by shutting down Voice of America and limiting AP's White House coverage. The FCC currently has open investigations into ABC, CBS, and NBC News. Greg Clugston, the White House.
The death toll from last week's powerful earthquake that devastated Myanmar has topped 1,700. At least 3,400 are injured, more than 300 people unaccounted for.
270 monks were taking a religious exam when the quake hit, decimating the building. 70 were able to escape, but 50 have already been found dead, and around 100 are still unaccounted for. Meanwhile, Thai authorities coordinating efforts to find anyone left alive under a Bangkok collapsed building say they have detected signs of possible life. I'm Charles de Ledesma.
Freezing rain and severe storms left several 100,000 people without power across parts of Michigan, Wisconsin, and Indiana over the weekend. As of this morning, the lights have been slowly coming back on. Stocks deep in the red this morning on Wall Street. The Dow is down 127 points. The Nasdaq is off 330 points. More on these stories at townhall.com.
Just hearing the word IRS can make people break out in a cold sweat. No one wants to deal with the IRS, and now you don't have to. The good news is Legal Tax Defense has been successfully negotiating with the IRS for more than 15 years. It doesn't matter how much you owe, whether it's $5,000 or $5 million. You deserve the best in the business on your side, and that is Legal Tax Defense. Even if you're working with someone else and just want a second opinion, there is no cost or obligation to call. They can prevent levies, liens, wage garnishments, even file back tax returns. And the best news about Legal Tax Defense is they won't take your case unless they know they will reduce or eliminate your tax debt. Call Legal Tax Defense right now for a free, no-risk consultation. 800-292-7875. 800-292-7875. You have nothing to lose but everything to gain. 800-292-7875.
In the medical field, IT security is crucial. Our highly skilled consultants are HIPAA certified and have 20-plus years of experience servicing medical clinics, billing, and supply companies. We offer comprehensive endpoint protection, guarding your computers and servers against all stages of threats. And with our 24/7 monitoring services, you'll never worry about extensive downtime again. Ready to level up your IT support? Call 801-706-6980 today and discover how great IT services can be with managed IT services.
Step into the boots of the American West with Range Magazine, where grit meets grace. This is a front row seat to the stories, struggles, and triumphs of ranchers, farmers, and stewards of the land. From jaw-dropping photography to no-nonsense reporting, Range brings you the untold tales of life on the range. Whether you're a city dweller with a cowboy's heart or living life where the pavement ends, Range speaks to the soul of the West. Subscribe today at rangemagazine.com.
You know where the solution can be found, Mr. President? In churches, in wedding chapels, in maternity wards across the country and around the world. More babies will mean forward-looking adults, the sort we need to tackle long-term, large-scale problems. American babies in particular are likely going to be wealthier, better educated, and more conservation-minded than children raised in still industrializing countries. As economist Tyler Cowen recently wrote, quote, "By having more children, you're making your nation more populous, thus boosting its capacity to solve climate change. The planet does not need for us to think globally and act locally so much as it needs us to think family and act personally. The solution to so many of our problems, at all times and in all places, is to fall in love, get married, and have some kids."
Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty Roundtable Radio Talk Show.
I like Donald Trump. I think in many ways he's done a lot more than other presidents in my lifetime. Hopefully he bans the Planned Parenthood funding immediately. Donald Trump has done a lot of good. There's a lot of concern, too. When Trump floats possibility of running for a third term, he says there are methods in which you can do it. And my response is not. There's not, folks. Okay, unless you manipulate some weird, whatever, trying to bend the law to your will, setting a horrible precedent, to say the least. I mean, how do you fight for term limits on one hand but push for Donald Trump to serve a third term on the other? Folks, everybody's all over the map. The answer is to look to the supreme law of the land, and it says, hey, Donald can't serve another term. Let's find somebody else who can and who will stand for the sacred cause of liberty. And if we're smart, we'll find somebody who's even more likable and more doing the right things than even Trump was. Is that possible? Yes. Will we find our way there? I pray the answer is yes. Utah, in my opinion, Governor Cox, what a disgrace, refuses to sign the bill because he knows that he's standing against the whole of the legislative body of Utah. I mean, it's a disgrace that we're even debating flying perverted flags on our state and local buildings in the first place. But it's good they got that stopped. Now let's make sure we don't fly the military flag above anything else, too, sending the wrong message to the citizenry. But we do have a good news piece. Utah officially becomes the first U.S. state to ban fluoride in public tap water. One American News, Blake Wolf with the piece, Doctor, this is actually good news. We're setting the standard, and, hey, I don't want fluoride in the water.
Well, it's absolutely a
if you want to take
absurdity.
the choice to have fluoride, use your own water, take your own pills or whatever, but leave me and the rest of the population out of it by force, right?
Yeah, the pills are virtually free if you want that thing, but this whole scam behind it, I mean, it is a scam, a medical scam, and everything has been around for decades. In fact, a couple dozen decades, no, not a couple of dozen decades, probably 20 years ago-ish, we were very, very, very much involved in preventing our county from fluoriding the water, and we had a big public debate about it. We won in the polls, and so our county did not adopt what the general adoption was in the state. But we went all through. I mean, medication in your general water. I mean, come on. Remember Aldous Huxley's Brave New World? They put soma in the water to keep everybody kind of on an even keel.
My friend.
Huh?
Docile,
and fluoride has an effect on that, and the way it happens with the pineal gland and all that kind of stuff. But the point of the matter is that the idea of general
they're
medication,
trying to figure out a way to give me and you some of that docile water, Doctor.
Well, I'm sure glad we didn't have it in my county for all these last decades. But we just it's absurd. I mean, nobody wants to get a cold. Why don't we put some kind of antibiotic or antiviral? Oh, let's put remdesivir in. Let's do the mRNA.
Yeah, because then nobody will get the cocoa, right? I mean, it's just insane. It's a slippery slope of disaster, and I commend the state of Utah for trying to put a stop to it. It's a good, leadership position to be in. The promoting of constitutional currency, gold and silver, is too. Utah does a lot wrong, but we got to give them credit when they do some right, huh?
Yep, I'll take my hat off this time. But just before we completely leave this thing about limits and government and trust of men, and everybody wants Trump forever, and there was a large contingent of Trumper people in after the 2020 election that wanted the military to basically bring a coup about, and that, holy cow, and it'd be all the white hats, all this kind of stuff. But let me just back in 1798, Jefferson and Madison collaborated on both the Kentucky and Virginia resolutions. And just as a little statement out of there, that I recommend everybody reading again today the Virginia and Kentucky resolutions, because they talk about the application of nullification and the constitutionality of that, and when it's supposed to be done and when it's not supposed to be done. There's limits and bounds on nullification even. But here's just one statement. It would be a dangerous delusion were a confidence in the men of our choice to silence our fears for the safety of our rights. That confidence is everywhere the parent of despotism. Free government is founded in jealousy and not in confidence. It is jealousy and not confidence that prescribes limited constitutions to bind down those whom we are obliged to trust with power that our Constitution has accordingly fixed to the limits to which and no further our confidence may go. Okay, just skipping down just a little bit for just a little tiny other little addition to that, because you could read the whole thing and cheer all the way through. It says, in questions of power then let no more be heard of confidence in man, but bind him down from mischief by the chains of the Constitution. And that is, my friends, the whole concept behind limited governments and constitutions.
Amen to that. My fear is they're going to turn Donald Trump into a wartime president. I pray it doesn't happen, but it's well on its way. Headline, Wars and Rumors of Wars. Our founding fathers rejected U.S. hegemony. And now, headline says, U.S. confirms strike in Yemen. Overnight attacks include the capital. Newser.com with this piece. They got a big old problem here. We're bombing the heck out of people with no real justification. Congress derelict in their duty to rein in Trump in this case. He claims he's for peace. Why is he even bombing these people, Doctor?
Well, there's no constitutional justification.
Well, if he's doing it without authority, it turns him into a war criminal, right?
It does indeed. And if you think, oh, it's just an air war, it's not war. It's an action.
No, it's killing people, sir. Hold on, stop.
It's an act of war, people. Hawaii and Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941, that was an act of war. It was just the same thing we're doing to the Houthis. And I believe personally that it is in direct support of the Zionist perspective of Israel.
Yeah.
It absolutely
and that's got to stop.
And the Houthis were responding to the genocidal stuff that's going on in Gaza, where you're losing hundreds of thousands of people. They've bombed it back into the Dark Ages, to the Stone Ages, with 2,000-pound bombs that came from the United States. I mean, so they were responding by attacking the shipping lanes in the Red Sea. Now, it's like holy Hannah. So now the United States goes out and starts a war. Of course, it's a really easy war in a lot of ways, because we just, it's a little tiny, dinky, backward country, and we bomb them back into the Stone Ages. And, I don't even know, I would venture to guess that we have not had one aircraft that's ever not come back from a mission. And thankfully for that, because those people that are flying them, are people that are out there doing the military adventurism for the United States. But there's an example of the improper use of United States military. So, yeah, bind them down from mischief by the chains of the Constitution. Don't let them start wars and, unconstitutional.
And I'm telling you right now, the Trump administration, they put some good people in place, better than almost any president that I've seen. But they have so many hawkish, belligerent, war-loving, war-mongering people surrounding President Trump. I don't know. I think he'll be deceived into this. He'll get pressure from all sides. If we don't do this, this will happen, and this and that. And the president doesn't have the constitutional knowledge or the understanding of the blowback principle from the CIA or, Ron Paul modern time-esque Humboldt foreign policy. Trump doesn't have enough savvy in that to withstand their abuses and their misdirection and their plow towards war. We've got to stand up and stop it, folks. We don't need to be there. Why are we doing it at all? What's the justification? What makes sense? Why are we doing it? And we shouldn't be doing it.
The overwhelming majority of Trump's cabinet are
pro-war,
100% Zionists, and they're going into, they're doing this on behalf of Israel. And people don't understand that is not on the job description of any of these people. It's just not. People act like they've got.
Hold on. In fact, it's on the job description to do the very 180-degree opposite, which is advocate for peace around the world using diplomatic relationships, using the greatest economic engine ever known to man, the free enterprise system. I mean, that's the way we should be moving forward.
Well, it should, and Trump is talking about, and again, you say, oh man, you guys are just bashing Trump, but we need to point out that there's not constitutional things are going on, and they're actually high-risk things. He talked yesterday about these huge tariffs on Russian oil, and it'll be secondary tariffs. I don't think he'll be able to say, okay, we're any barrel of oil that goes out of Russia gets taxed this amount. But if people that take the Russian oil somehow get an additional tariff put on them, all of these things are really economic war. They're acts of war that we're taking against sovereign nations because they don't agree with our approach to things. Now, the reason he's doing this is because he wants to make Putin more flexible for the peace in Ukraine thing, but
not going to happen. You pick sides. You pick sides, and you'll eventually have an olive branch in one area, but you'll get the blame and the hit in the other area. There's no good plan for this whatsoever. We're not defending America first principles. We're not protecting America from foreign invasions or invaders or anything like that. So we've gone from defensive in nature to offensive, and when that happens, we're in trouble.
You give offense when you go offensive, and there is blowback, and there unquestionably. And I'll give you an example. And this goes back 170 years-ish. There was an order given by Brigham Young, the leader of the Utah Territory, in 1849 to go annihilate the Timpanogos clan of Native Americans. And there was a little boy that survived that. His name was Black Hawk. And in 1865, he was of age, and he had this burning anger about what had been done by the people that he felt were invading their land. And he started the Black Hawk War, and it went for 7 years. But it was blowback. It took from say 1850 until 1865. So we had 15 years of kind of quiet in that particular area. But the blowback started, and it lasted 7 years. There's always blowback. There's always some kind of somebody's going to
retribution, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, and
right.
It's disaster, folks. We need to be smart enough to avoid it. So I appreciate Donald Trump talking about peace. I appreciate him wanting to help resolve these conflicts around the world. But he's misguided if he thinks he can be at the center of it. For example, do you pick Ukraine's side or Russia's side? And whatever side you pick on a given issue, even if you say, well, I'm going to pick the Ukraine for these things and Russia for these things, and let's hammer out a deal, you're just going to be hated. You're just going to experience blowback because you're involved in it, and you ought not be. Same thing is with this, Gaza Strip, we're going to turn it into an entertainment zone. Is that the plan? Okay, where does Trump get off suggesting he's going to do that? He has nothing to do with that territory, that land. He has no authority over it. There's no sovereign authority whatsoever. Where does he get off thinking he should even be involved in the discussions, for that matter? Why is he even at the table?
There's no authority, but here's the deal. There's a lot of downside if the United States does take some kind of role in that thing, because now it's whether it's been in Gaza and running the gaming tables there, or it's the thing about, well, let's look at Ukraine and running their power plants. I mean, we will.
Why would we run their power plants? What do we have to do with their power plants at all?
That's what I got. I mean, sure, but Trump's suggesting that. And the problem is that we get skin in the game at that point, and then we take ownership. It's kind of like what happened.
How you dare messing with our power plant, so-and-so. What do you do? Okay, and we think we have these obligations all around the world, and we insert ourselves where we ought not be in the first place, ladies and gentlemen. I got an interesting twist, and this relates kind of to I think they'll turn Donald Trump into a war president. I pray that he doesn't. He might avoid the war, and then it might be passed to the next person that ends up with a more of a full scale war kind of a thing. I don't know the timing of this, but I know this: when we continue to do what we're doing, unless we stop it, war is the only eventuality. Now, Bill Gates is in the news. Headline says Bill Gates exposes the frightening future of AI. Sarah Arnold with the piece. Bill Gates is claiming that artificial intelligence, AI, will replace doctors and teachers within the next decade, suggesting that humans will be unnecessary for most things. Gates predicted that AI would likely not replace jobs in the entertainment industry. However, manufacturing, transportation, and agriculture jobs would eventually become solved problems through AI. Now, the reason I bring this up, Dr. Bradley, is I think this directly relates to a war mentality. When you say people are basically worthless for, they're not worth anything, then you say, hey, you'll still have your job in the entertainment industry, but jobs in the, manufacturing, transportation, and agriculture. Now, let me just explain to people so they understand. That's the Communist Manifesto takeover plan. Have government take over agriculture, manufacturing, transportation. He just needs to add communications, and he's about promoted the full Communist Manifesto. Folks, this is disaster on steroids. Forget the AI discussion for a minute. This is we're coming for your core. And once they do that and they take control of these industries, more so than they already have, they've already gone a long way in this. I'm telling you right now, there will not be freedom on the table, Doctor, if we allow this to stand.
Well, that's the problem, is Bill Gates is always looking for the biggest, baddest way to control and contain society in his image. And you can almost take it as a blanket, unequivocal, statement without even looking at what the subject is. Bill Gates is wrong, it's just...
he's wrong, but he's gaining ground because of ignorant politicians that, for filthy lucre, forward his agenda, right? Or forward his push for this. Look, we don't need AI or anybody else to take over these manufacturing jobs or farming jobs, or people are free to farm and create, victory gardens and local food co-ops. And we need to start thinking local, folks, and jettisoning this state and or general government scenario. We need to focus local and not let them take our rights away. And if you want to find a robot to help you farm, by all means, have a good time. But we, the people, need to make sure we remain in charge. Just because AI can do something, it doesn't mean that it should, Doctor.
Sam, you're kind of a music aficionado. You remember back in 1969, the song In the Year 2525? People should go look it up and listen to it a little bit. But, it's when, if man is still alive, everything is kind of, you've lost your need for your limbs. Everything, it's just, you're just an accoutrement to existence is all. And, it was, who was it that did that? Zager and Evans, I think, did it. So if you can find it, it's kind of it's an AI precursor because it came in 1969. It's before your time.
And it's shocking that it's already here, right? I mean, we're in the year 2025,
Yeah, well, but 2525 is the name of the song. But 1984, Orwell talked about what Orwellian society is now.
Yeah, peaked at number one on the Billboard charts in 69, by the way, Doctor.
Yeah, hey, I was there, man. I remember that. But the fact of the matter is that just because somebody predicted it doesn't mean you have to do it. But it just kind of seems funny that some of these forward-looking people, I don't know if they're really forward-looking. It's just they're dreading something happen and they predict it, But we're
well, or is it a
quickly.
self-fulfilling prophecy, Doctor?
Maybe, I don't know. I don't know what it is. Reality kind of imitates, fiction, or fiction reality. I don't know what the attitude is, but the fact is we are moving, and if Bill Gates has his way, which I predict he will not get. Because at some point, somewhere along the line, there's going to be people that will say over our dead body.
Amen to that. All right, here it is. In the year 2025.
2025 or 2525?
2525.
Right.
If man is still alive, if woman can survive, they may find in the year 3,535 ain't going to need to tell the truth, tell no lies. Everything you think, do, and say is in the pill you took today. In the year 4,545, ain't going to need your teeth, won't need your eyes. You won't find a thing to chew. Nobody's going to look at you. In the year 5,555, so we keep going, right? Your arms are hanging limp at your sides. Your legs got nothing to do. Some machine is doing that for you. In the year 6,565, ain't going to need no husband, won't need no wife. You'll pick your son. You'll pick your daughter too. From the bottom of a long glass tube. Whoa. In the year 7,510, if God's a common, he ought to make it by then. Maybe he'll look around himself and say, guess it's time for the judgment day. In the year 8,510, God is going to shake his mighty head then. He'll either say, I'm pleased where man has been, or tear it down and start again. Whoa, whoa. In the year 9, it goes on. I'm kind of wondering if man is going to be alive. He's taken everything this old earth can give, and he ain't put back nothing. Now it's been 10,000 years. Man has cried a million tears for what he never knew. Now man's reign is through. Anyway, it goes on. Great song, lays it out perfectly.
Very dreary kind of concept. But the fact is, Bill Gates is looking for this kind of Bravo Sierra, whether it's the jab and he's across the jabs, his Gavi organization and their deleterious effect all across sub-Saharan Africa with the infertility that's happening. Oh, by the way, that's a big thing. Did you see Musk's deal in Wisconsin, where he said the biggest thing that keeps him awake at night is depopulation, and the fertility rates are way down, and I think that can be attributed largely to beliefs and practices. But the jab has absolutely cratered that. When do you see somebody that's going to have a baby nowadays? I mean, I think that he's really concerned that we're going to basically phase ourselves out. And he says in Japan, they're about 3 generations away from doing that. And that's
well, this again comes with man meddling in the affairs of God. Multiply and replenish the earth has never been rescinded. God knows what he's doing. There's plenty of room and plenty to spare. And when we've tampered with it, we've simply upset things, and now we don't know what to do. And so, again, the blowback comes because when you violate eternal principle, when you violate the laws of God, it ain't going to go well, doctor. That's what we're looking at.
Right, and even godless individuals like Elon Musk. I mean, he's multiplying, replenishing the earth with as many women as he can pick up. But he practices what he preaches to make sure, I don't know, what does he have, about a dozen kids or something like that? But the fact is that children, they're supposed to come into a family that was God ordained, and they have men and women that have divine roles and raising up of a family that can teach character and principle and things like that, so we can maintain our God-given rights and liberty and our prosperity and our peace and all those kind of things. The traditional family really plays a huge role in that, and we've largely discounted that.
It is the fundamental unit of society, right?
It is. And you know what? Even religions have become complicit, if you will, in redirecting that divine role in many instances where they really don't seem to see that the God had a hand in establishing a pretty stable kind of situation, that children could be brought into the world and those children could be raised to have character and position. There was a time when every generation expected to have something that they brought an advancement to from the previous generation. And I think this generation today has got a lower expectation than that. I think they're saying, you know what, we're not going to be as prosperous. We're not going to have as much peace. We're not going to have as much stuff. And unfortunately, that's where a lot of people really are focused, is stuff.
And they are wrongfully so. But see, when you take away the tie to God, family, and country, what is there left, doctor?
Well, we become more and more base, and it's kind of like, where does the alley cat mentality start and stop? And we're kind of in that mode, I think, sadly, right now, the alley cat mode.
The answer, ladies and gentlemen, is turn to God, family, and country. The answer is to have faith in the Lord Jesus Christ and repent. The answer is to turn to God Almighty and keep his commandments and realize that when we do so, he promises blessings. And if we don't, well, we lose those blessings. Let's just be very simple and clear. It is a battle between Christ and Satan. Who do you serve? As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. All right, hour one in the can. Thank you, Dr. Bradley. freedomsrisingsun.com. Sign up for his weekly webinars, his Q&As on the Constitution, and more. That's freedomsrisingsun.com. Lovingliberty.net, our nationally syndicated radio network. Download their iPhone and Android apps. Get involved today. Donate, would you please? Lovingliberty.net. And God save the Republic.